for sure. And the formula always starts with Dee Dee and kind of ends with me with regard to building a house. I mean, it's as simple as it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you're building a house, I put the roof on. But I think as, as time passed and we recognized for sure Dave's talents, this music is for sure always run through him. We keep the semblance of the same formula where it starts with Dee Dee Verney and ends with me, but Dave Lynch snakes through that entire process. It has a huge input to how the record, the finished product is.
Yeah, he almost acts like in a producer role.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of how he contributes.
Changes parts,
Yeah.
adds parts. I mean, it's really skeletal when you get it. It's just it's a skeletal song, and then by the time it's finished, it's got to go through all this process. So, I think he's totally instrumental into the way the band sounds in the current day. Wings of War, for instance. I mean, it's some of the best work he's ever done is on this record.
It's pretty funny. I guess it was 1998, whatever. I was going to Costa Rica to go surfing. So I was actually on a trip, whatever. Was having some stuff going on with the band that I was in at the time, the one that I was talking about that opened up for Overkill back then. And I happened to read an ad inside of the paper.
We put an ad in East Coast Rocker.
Back in the musicians classified thing, whatever, it said something like professional band looking for, a touring guitarist, whatever, in the style of like maybe Sabbath, Pantera, nothing to indicate Overkill at all.
And it said send a tape to.
Let me find some fucking picture. I'm just walling through some stuff. I pull it out. I grabbed a cassette of that same band and I just shoved it inside there and I wrote on the cassette, have pro gear, have experience, whatever, blah, 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 in this little thing. If you're interested, give me a call. I'll be back at the end of the month.
And it was, so great, good, chunky stuff, really good. And so there was a number on the cassette, so I called him, left a message, called him, left a message, like 3 or 4 messages. I'm like, fuck this guy. I mean, he sends us a tape, and then he doesn't even return calls. What's his problem?
I came back, and I got a phone call that day. I said, hey, we listened to what you were. We've been through our auditions, and if you'd like to come down, we're about to make a decision. This is the band. And I remember saying, shit, I don't have a friggin' record. I ran to the store, picked up whatever was, in the bins, and I remember learning it and showing up. And it's kind of funny. I walk into, at the time, Dee Dee's studio.
I walk in to Dee Dee's studio.
I'm not really sure if it's Blitz or not, to tell you the truth, because I didn't know, So I walk in, and I had a Harley shirt on.
So, like the wise ass I am, I walk over to him, I go, nice shirt. You got a bike to match it?
And I looked at him like, what?
He goes, yeah, I got both. I said, you got the job.
Was he? And he was from Jersey.
I said, I got fucking both. I walked in the door, and all of a sudden he comes walking in back with this thing. I was like, oh, great, that worked out real well.
Similar values, grew up with the same DNA, a lot of the same stories, a lot of the same shit.
We played through some stuff, and when I was done, they just said, do you want the gig?
We knew pretty quick that Dave was going to be...
Make the band better.
Yeah.
He's actually older than us.
By 2 years.
Somewhere at my house, I actually still have that cassette, that stupid friggin' note, because when I was there, it was laying in the top of the garbage can as far as the note and whatever. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. Now I'm in this band, let me grab that. So I actually have it, but it's a pretty funny story that way, but that's how I actually got in the band.
He told me that it was because of the shirt and the bike, because you answered right.
Oh, he's full of shit.
And Derek, too, is, he kind of contributes in a lot of different ways, too. He always does all the background vocals.
Oh, well.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I have to, where do I start? It's all his fault. I can never, ever really not thank him enough for this wonderful opportunity. I've known Dave, we kind of grew up because we're from Jersey. We were I was in bands.
Let me interject real quick first, just by saying this. Derek, once upon a time, was an awesome bass player.
That's
One of
correct.
the best in the area.
I would have gotten to that.
No, I wanted to clarify first. So
I will clarify, no problem.
So everybody will understand that.
We've known each other for forever. I mean, he was in bands, I was in bands, and we'd always kind of cross paths with each other and saying, hey, we got to hook up one of these days and this and that and whatever. No matter how much you're going to say this, I was a bass player. That's what I grew up playing bass and learning all bass songs and being a bass player in bands. One day I get a call from Dave, and he says to me, he goes, "Hey, listen, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but Dee Dee has to bail out on the second half of the Halford tour. We're in Europe, we're going to be going away, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah." And he says, "Would you be interested in doing it?" And before he finished it, yes, no matter what, yes. Joe Comeau was leaving to go sing for Annihilator. So they were looking for a guitar player. So when we did that tour and came home, Dave said to me, he goes, "Hey, listen," he goes, "I know you play guitar. Would you be interested in taking Joe's spot?" And I never played guitar in a band ever in my life. And the first words out of my mouth were, "Yes, I will do it, no problem."
See, I don't remember it like that at all.
No, it definitely was like that. Had to kind of adapt to that whole style of playing, and having a guitar around my neck is pretty fucking scary when I'm comfortable behind a bass, So the first show was in Osaka, Japan. That's was my first show, and I remember that we're walking up on the stage, and he just goes, boom, pushes me right out, and I was like, "Oh boy, this is going to be fun." But that's how I got into this.
How you could leave this one out was unbelievable, really.
Oh, the picture.
And, yeah, Dee Dee had drawn a self-portrait of himself and taped it to the top of Derek's bunk. So he doesn't see it, of course, exactly right away, but he gets into the thing, and all of a sudden you hear some commotion, whatever. And there's a picture of Dee Dee looking at Derek, in a sense, that says, "Don't fuck up."
On the top of my bunk, it says, "Don't fuck up."
And you obviously don't want to change members. You don't want to do that. It's not first on our list. It's not in the top 10. But if it happens, you have to deal with it and accept it and move in the right direction for whatever the plan is in our heads. And when a new guy comes in, he brings a huge excitement. He brings not just his talents, but he brings his excitement to being the new guy. I mean, you want to go up to the plate and you want to get a base hit. You want to hit a home run.
Beginning of 2016, I was getting ready to go to Europe on what was going to be my last Flotsam tour. I say it was my last because that was the last one I did before I went to Overkill. But even at that time, I felt that might be my last tour anyways. Just because we weren't getting the business that we wanted, and I was used to being in a full-time band for the last 15 years, and now I'm in a band that really wasn't a full-time band. Not that we didn't want to be, but we just didn't have the opportunity to be. So obviously for someone who pays their bills from doing that, if it's a non-full-time thing, then it's not going to work out for that guy who's trying to pay his bills off that. So my phone went off one day, and blitz. And Overkill was going to be in town like 2 months later, and I'm like, seems odd he's calling me 2 months before they come to town. I know this phone call isn't going to be, "Hey dude, want me to put you on the guest list?" So I call him, "Hey, what's going on?" And he goes, "Hey, well, got a question for you." I'm like, "Yeah, what's that?" He goes, "Well, me and Dee Dee were wondering if you want to join the band." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You don't want to think about it?" I go, all right, just give me 5 seconds to go talk about this with my wife, and I'll call you right back." So literally after my wife thought that I was going to be getting off the road, I'm like, "Well, one door closes, another one opens." And there you go. Here we are 2 years later. Dee Dee told me he wrote some of the songs. When he was coming up with some of the program drum parts, he had said to me on one tour, I'm really getting familiar with the way you play and your style." "Oh, really? How so?" "Well, some of the stuff I'm writing is based on some of the stuff I've been hearing you do." "Oh, that's kind of cool." So it makes me think that I know I'm rubbing off in some way if he's cognizant about that, and it's influencing his writing somehow, or influencing the drum part to, okay, Jason might play something like this, then I think that's great, and I think that the year that we did spend doing that was definitely productive. To get closer as a band, tighter as a unit, and not only as just knowing each other as people, but just as a band, on a band level, when you go into write and record a record, I think it's much easier than just going in there and now you're doing it with a new guy in the band, but he just joined and you haven't even been anywhere with him. It's like, well, no, you can't say that. We've been touring for 14 months now before we got into a room to make a record. So I think it just makes for more cohesiveness.
By the time we started, to do work on the demo stuff and whatever, there was a vibe already that already had started. You know what I mean? He was in the band for over a year at that point. So, we definitely had some shows under our belts and some ideas of where it was able to go.
When we started demoing this stuff for Wings of War, Jason was working on it on a continuous basis. I would get 5 files a day. It's like, what do you think of this for Head of a Pin? What do you think of that for Believe in the Fight? What do you think of this for the opening song? And it was, you could tell that the decision that, that we made and the decision he made because of his excitement and the way he was coming through was correct for both of us. We were going to get great results out of this because he was, we had a guy who's talented behind the kit. We have a guy with 20 years experience with us who's super talented with the axe. We got Skullman, whose role is indispensable in this band. Now we've just added fucking Jason to this, who wants to work. He wants to make it better. And I think we scored. And I think it's one of the reasons that the band is still, it's valid. It's relevant 35 years later. It's not just what it was. It's keeping those principles and presenting them in the modern day. It's presenting what we wanted to do in the 80s in 2019 and progressing with all the technological progress that's happened in that time. So what's old now becomes new again with everybody's input.
Coming into this band, I did exactly what I did at any other band that I've been in, regardless of whether or not it was filling in an Anthrax for a tour, playing in Flotsam, being a member, coming to Shadows Fall, coming to Overkill. Going into a band, I always try to give respect to the drummers who came before me where it's due. Play their parts correctly. Play their parts as close to what's on the record. Play the parts that the band expects to hear. Play the parts that the audience needs to hear. But there's stuff here and there that you can do your own thing, or those fills that you've heard in your head when you used to jam this song when you were 17, you made up this fill that you wanted to put in that you thought should have went there. Well, maybe now you're the drummer in the band, put it in there now. If you don't get that weird look, then it's all right.
We didn't want him to play what he thought we wanted to hear. And I think that happens with a new guy gets into a band, even if he's familiar with the band and the material. Sometimes he's like, well, this is what they did on that record, and this is, I kind of see their vibe, so I think this is what they want to hear. And he wasn't doing that, which was good to begin with, and we just kept that fire burning as much as possible with Jason to say, you know what, whatever you're hearing on this part, that's what we want you to do. Because
be Jason.
Yeah, and be honest, because let me tell you, metal fans, they sometimes get a bad rep, but those fuckers can smell out if you're being honest or not in your music. I mean, they will root you out and throw you out into the sunlight to burn. You have to be honest above all things. And
I'm a metal fan.
That's all I did. I would get the demos of the drum machine. I'd get them without the drum machine. I would start sending back files of, here, this is what I'm thinking of based on what you already sent me. And it just, I don't think I ever once got an email that said, nope, don't do that. Pretty much it was just like, great shit, keep it coming. Okay, that was killer too. Well, what about this idea? I had this alternate idea. That's cool too. Just like, now it's like, now you're sending me too much stuff. Let's just wait till we get to pre-production. Like, okay, cool.
Obvious things aside is the instrument he plays. He's a drummer. He breathes, thinks, pisses, shits, drums. That's what he does. He's focused on that, and that is part of his characteristic and is part of his personality. This is what I do. Nothing else. I could probably fix a car, but this is what I do. So whenever you get me for this, it's going to be Jason Bittner.
I think getting to know Jason personally, he's got more ability than all of us. I mean, he's pretty damn good drummer.
Don't tell him that.
But just to get him to kind of gel with us and to feel comfortable personally, and then reassure him over and over that his chops, his personality, that's what we want on tape. That just comes through on the record big time.
He did an amazing job on this record. Amazing job. Just from the first drum tracks when he was throwing stuff back and forth, I was like, what do you think of it? Go. Just go. You got it.
It's all about chemistry, and we've always had it. I mean, for sure, Dee Dee and I have always had it through the years. Just a kind of an understanding. There is no long discussions about the song. You kind of get it. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
We would kill everything we ever did if we ever had to talk about
right.
it.
I mean, we've talked more now in front of this camera together than we have in the last 6 months.
Yeah, sounds good. That sounds good. All right, great.
It's not discussed in depth, but if we start getting into a certain groove where things start becoming samey, and I think we kind of did that with a couple of records, and I love those records, but the
Yeah.
Electric Age and White Devil Armory preceded this, and the Grinding Wheel, Ironbound, we're starting to get into a groove of a certain presentation. I think this is brand new, and I kind of like the feeling that we have something that's not just what we did, or just what we did 2 records ago, that there still is, in our world at least, new frontiers to explore, or to make heavier, or to make more, I guess brutal would be the word, because this is a brutal record with a hell of a lot of melody, which is not necessarily the norm for us. It's usually one or the other. This is for sure all's out on both elements.
Is that going to be like a record that people think of as always one of the records that goes on the Mount Rushmore of Overkill records? We won't know. Ask me 2 years from now, but right now it seems like we have something that where a lot of the songs could really be great live, and that's usually a pretty good indicator that we'll have something that the kids really kind of put up there as maybe higher up than some of the other records.
Feels special. I think you need defining moments to be able to look back and say, oh, that's where it changed. That's where we became us. And I think one of the things that worked for us together, and still works in this band as a band, is that we've always treated it like a band. And as this band kind of fell apart and the layers of the onion were peeled away and some of the stuff went away, we had a lot of the same principles. Those defining moments, whether it's really during the grunge time or whether it coincides with the grunge time and we were taking over management, we kind of knew that with those principles, with the bridges burned, and with what we were prepared by other people, who shared knowledge with us and told us, don't do this ever. And yes, every time that comes up, grab it. We had that information. So those defining moments make us what we are today. So to say you're proud of yourself this many years later, you go back and say, that's because of those defining moments. That's because it made me the person I am today, or made us the team we are through whatever, lean times, rich times, good times, bad times. But I think we've always had, the same ideas, but we've also had the same preparation. We're a bunch of Jersey guys, we're one New York prick. We're gonna get into changes of dress. But we have the same values as people, and we get together because even though we went to war many times in the past to keep this going, the idea to this point is that we've defined as people and we have a good fucking time doing it. That's why it works. It's not about, I really don't like being in the same room with that guy. It's always hanging out and busting balls. And if you're doing that, you're having a good time. So I think that after being defined, this is what brought us to this point.